People talk, listen, man, I'm going to raise that red flag.
This narrative, especially after 1 year.
1 year.
One bad year. It's one big splash move. And because I don't think people understand how much cap space we can create.
Alex, I want to ask you, because you're a very humble person.
And I'm never going to be right about anything.
Yeah.
I was right.
What's up, y'all? I'm back again. It's Friday. This will probably be out on Saturday. I just wanted to, get on here because I'm actually not working at the bar tonight because, one, we're, putting coats of polyurethane on, we're painting, and there's just so many chemicals inside our bar right now that I decided I'm just not going in for a day just to make sure my brain works in 5 years. So I'm here, and because I'm at home and I'm not doing a lot, I decided to, create a episode or make an episode or whatever. Okay. So the schedule came out, and I feel like what happens is that we react based on, oh man, we had an easy schedule, we get a hard schedule, or we get to play this team first or this team first, and we don't really dive deep into the schedule and what it means and advantages, disadvantages, because here's what happens. We assume that the teams that were good last year are also going to be good this year. So we're like, oh, great, we get to play, I'm just giving this as an example, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm saying we get to play the Jags week 1. Well, the Jags have talented players. They play at home. They have a new coach that we're not able to scout. They have new players coming in. There's just so many unknowns with the Jags. They could be the Texans from when CJ Stroud's first year, and they just go crazy. So the assumption of, oh, we get this easy team, or we get this difficult team, or yada, 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 yada. I kind of want to use historical data on literally looking into not only what to expect from a schedule like this, but also to see how our team and what we've done this offseason can compare to historical teams that have done similar things. So let's start off with the schedule, okay? So the schedule, there's always more disadvantages for the Panthers than any other team. Mostly because we're fourth fiddle. If you think about it that way. They're going to have the big markets on the primetime games, and because the big markets are the most watched teams, they're going to have the advantages because the consumer wants to see those teams in the playoffs. Now, it's not huge advantages, but the advantages are still there. So I did it on Twitter. I put this out on Twitter so you can see it on Twitter. So I went through every single game and objectively told whoever follows me the advantages and the disadvantages of our schedule. And when I looked at it immediately, I actually had the adverse reaction that most people had, where it's most people were like, oh man, we get these easy teams early so that we can create momentum for these later teams. I didn't see that. I saw, crap, we're playing 3 of 4 games on the road. So this is what I said on Twitter. So week 1, we are on the road against Jacksonville. Here's our problem. We've completely changed over our defense specifically, and we've added some of our top skill players on offense are rookies. So they get Cohen, and Cohen was the offensive coordinator for the Bucs last year. So they saw Evero's defensive packages twice last year. And so they can scheme their offense, which has Michelle Tootin, who's new, Travis Hunter, who's new. So they have new players that we haven't been able to scout as far as players. Also, Trevor Lawrence only played half the year. So we haven't seen Trevor Lawrence in half of a season, and we have new players that we've never seen before. So they have all these players that we've never seen on offense. But Cohen has seen our packages on defense. We are also coming in with a huge changeover and going on the road immediately. So it's not like you're going into a comfortable situation on a field that you're used to playing on. So we have to go to that place and we're going against a coach that understands how to scheme against Evero on that side of the football, right? That said, I think we should win the game. I think we're a more talented team, but that is a disadvantage. So if we just think of it as a disadvantage, that's one disadvantage. Not only that, think about how this works out. First of all, we have a young team. We have a lot of new players. We go on the road. We have to travel back, and then we have to travel again. So that's a lot of traveling just in the first 2 weeks. We got to go cross country to Arizona, who we basically kicked out of the playoff contention last year. So we're going against Arizona, which is a revenge game for Arizona. And if you looked at PFF, who had the best drafts, it was basically us and Arizona. Arizona had a fantastic draft. So they have a lot of good young players. They have guys like McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr., Kyler Murray, who is another year removed from the ACL tear. So we theoretically should see big things. A third-round pick from Trey Binghamton. They still have James Conner. A pretty good team. A good defense as well. And we're going road, which is never, ever, ever good. So I don't want to every time I talk about this for it to be a soliloquy about who we're playing, but it's a disadvantage. Granted, I think we're still a better team to Arizona, but a lot of disadvantages there. So I'd go disadvantage. Then we travel back home, and we get our first home game. And we're like, yes, finally. We get Atlanta, who our last game of the season last year, we beat. So they're licking their chops to get another chance at us. And they only have to travel an hour. So we get them as our first home game. But I'm going to say there's no advantage. We're not a short week. It's football. I would say there's no advantage either way. It's just they really want to beat us. It sucks for us because that's our first home game. It's against a division opponent and against the team that we just beat. And we kind of knocked them out of the playoffs as well. But I don't want to be homer about this. It's not a disadvantage. We're still at home. We're still playing a divisional opponent at home. And it's our home opener. So in theory, there's a lot of momentum, a lot of energy, a lot of yada, yada, yada. We should be fine. And then the next game, we're on the road again. And we're playing against New England, who has a new head coach. And it's a team that, in Vrabel in general, likes to run the football and play good defense. You know what sucks when you travel 3 of 4 weeks to face a team that likes to run the ball and play good defense? I see it, in my mind, I see it as a disadvantage. One, because no matter what at all, we're traveling 3 of the first 4 weeks. That's bad. That's real bad. So I'm just going to say it's just a disadvantage. Because I'm trying to move quicker. We had the Dolphins, and they have a short week. So it's an advantage. And we're at home. So we have our first advantage, real advantage, because they're on a short week and we're at home. So they have to travel on a short week. We got a Cowboys, and it's the Cowboys' second road game. That's an advantage. So we have 2 advantages in a row. We go into week 7, and we're at the Jets. Nothing. We've been at home 2 weeks in a row. They're at home. It's a road game. Whatever. It's not a big a disadvantage. It's whatever. It's a game. Week 8, we get the Bills off of a bye. Definitely a disadvantage, even though we are at home. Week 9, we're at Green Bay. That's whatever. It's a road game. There's the same amount of time to prep. Not a disadvantage or advantage. So we get New Orleans, and it's their second straight road game. So that's an advantage for us. We get an advantage because road is not good, and we have only had one road game, and we're back at home. And then we're at Atlanta. At Atlanta, there's no advantage or disadvantage. It's just a game. It's just we have the same amount of time to prepare. Week 12, we're at San Francisco, and that's road, and the second road game is cross country. So I'm saying that's a disadvantage because we're cross country on the second road game. Week 13, we're at home at the Rams. There's no advantage or disadvantage. We are on a short week, which sucks, but we're at home, and they have to come cross country. So that kind of evens it out. No advantage, disadvantage. Then we go to bye, and so week 15, no matter what, we're off bye. Even though we're at New Orleans, we're still off a bye. So it's an advantage for us because we have 2 weeks to prepare. Week 16, we get Tampa Bay off a mini bye because they play the Thursday before. So they have 10 days to prepare. Disadvantage. Same thing the next week. We get Seattle off a mini bye. They have 10 days to prepare. Disadvantage. And then week 18, we play at the Bucks. Neither advantage or disadvantage. We have the same amount of time to prepare. It's just a road game. So basically, at the end of the day, if you kept up, we have 4 games where we have the advantage. We have 6 games where there's neither advantage or disadvantage, and we have 7 games that there is a clear advantage for the opponent. It's even enough where it's not atrocious, right? So that shouldn't play a big part. And hopefully you got all that through that with me. I might not even post this part of the video because it's kind of messy. But if you got through this part, now we go on to how historically would this team match up with other teams in the same kind of situation. So usually I go back to 2019, and if you follow me, I just picked an arbitrary year and used that year for every single podcast. So going back to 2019, but I have to go back to 2018 because the 18 team sets up the 19 season, because just like this is setting up for the 2025 season. So the 2018 team I chose because basically what I'm looking at is what team had a losing record, but at the end of the year started catching some momentum. So we ended the year 4-5 or 3-5, depending if you're the last 9 games, the last 8 games. I looked at the last 8 games because I'm trying to look at it from the most objective point of view. If I choose 8 games, then 3-5 is very, very objective, whereas 4-5, it feels like I'm just kind of looking to bump the numbers of the Panthers, even though that game was against the Giants in Germany, I guess. I can't remember. It was 17. It just, that's not where the momentum really starts, in my opinion. The following game is when the momentum really starts. So I try to look for a team that's around 4-4, 3-5 to end the season, even if they start off poor for whatever reason, usually injury related. So 2018, I picked the San Francisco 49ers of 2018. One, because they had a lot of injuries on defense. Foster only played 6 games. Colbert only played 7. Ward only played 9. Carter only played 8. Richard Sherman missed games. And the quarterback missed games as far as Jimmy G. And Jimmy G for that team is in his 2nd year. So they had a lot of things off that they could not help as far as injuries that sort of derailed the season that they could have had. So I chose them because they ended the last 8 games. They ended 3-5. They finished their season 4-12. We finished 5-12. So it makes sense as far as they ran into the same sort of stuff we did. They had a young coach. They had a 2nd year. I know Jimmy G was in the 2nd year, but he's in the 2nd year of that system, going into his 3rd year. So here's what happened to them. This is their offseason. They trade for D Ford, So a defensive lineman, so they're shoring up their defensive line. They sign a safety in Kyler Nelson. They sign linebacker David Mayo. They sign Jason Verrett, cornerback. They sign Demontre Moore, defensive lineman. They give the fifth-year option to DeForest Buckner. They draft Bosa, who's a pass rusher. We drafted pass rushers. They drafted Debo early. We drafted T-Mac. And they drafted linebacker Greenlaw. And they trade for Emmanuel Sanders. So basically, they make it a point to shore up their defense and to get receivers for Garoppolo. So the Niners go from 4-12 to 13-3. And they do this because they are healthy. They don't get the injury bug doesn't hit them this time around. So that matters so much, and that's something that we're not realizing. Staying healthy is such a key, and in theory, if we do that, because now we add depth, they don't have to play every snap. That team went from 4-12 to 13-3. So that, and I objectively picked. I mean, you can tell, like I picked objectively the team that was closest to us. One, because it's the second-year quarterback in the system. Two, because they finished 3-5, just like we did. They finished their whole season 4-12. We finished 5-12, and they had injuries galore on defense. So this is in 2019. So let's move on to see where this all goes. So 2020, I picked 2019 because we're looking at 2019 to go into 2020. I picked the Cleveland Browns, which makes a lot of sense, right? Because Baker was in his second year with Cleveland in 2019. He was drafted in 2018, just like Bryce last year was in his second year. So 2019 Browns they finished their year 4-4, the last 8 games. We finished 3-5, and they finished their season 6-10. We finished 5-12. So in that year, they had Garrett got hurt, and he only played 10 games the previous year. Ward got hurt, he only played 12, and Whitehead got hurt, he only played 8. So their best defensive players got hurt, which makes sense. That's what happened to the Panthers. Their defense got very hurt. And they added a diva-ish player. If you want to say OBJ is a diva, we added Deontay Johnson. There was a beef between Deontay Johnson and the coaches and the quarterback. So there's a lot of similarities. They had a good running back in Nick Chubb, who we had a good running back in Chuba Hubbard. So you're talking about a 1,000-yard back, diva-ish receiver, injuries on the defense. So it made a lot of sense for me to choose the Browns. So in 2020, we go into the third year of Baker. So that offseason, what they do is they sign linebacker B.J. Goodson. They sign Austin Hooper, a tight end. They sign Alumba, cornerback. They sign Billings, defensive tackle. They sign Sendejo, safety. They sign Jay Johnson as cornerback. They sign defensive and Claiborne. They sign safety Kelvin Joseph. They draft linebacker Phillips, defensive tackle Elliott, safety Delpit, and they trade for Ronnie Harrison as their safety. So they attack defense. And in the following year, guess what? Because they add depth to that defense, all of a sudden, the team starts to be a healthy team. And you have your quarterback going into year 3. And guess what? They go from 6-10 to 11-5. So just running it back right now, we were 5-12, and we're looking at what we're doing the next year. The 49ers, who are very similar to our situation, were 4-12, and they go 13-3 the next year. The Cleveland Browns, who are very similar to our situation, were 6-10, and they went 11-5 the following year. So let's go to the next team that's a lot like ours. So the next team I chose, the 2020 Cardinals, because they had second-year Kyler, just like we had second-year Bryce. Also, Kyler and Bryce are always and forever going to be kind of intertwined because they're very similar body types. So So the 2020 Cardinals ended 3-5, just like we did. Their overall record was 8-8. And I said that's okay for this exercise because we were 3 plays away from being 8-9. If Chuba doesn't fumble, if Leggett catches a pass, and if Tommy Tremble catches a pass, we're 8-9. So what happened with them is that all of their players got hurt. So they had Golden, who played 8 games. Chandler Jones played 5. Phillips played 9. Thompson played 4. They were just hurt all over the defensive line, or the defense overall. And their receiving core, they ended up adding DeAndre Hopkins, but overall there wasn't a lot there. There was a lot of I think Dan Arnold was the tight end on that team. I can't remember, but anyways, the defense got hurt. They ended the year 3-5. They did not have a winning season, but they went from 8-8 to the following year. They went 11-6. This was their offseason. They signed cornerback Alford for 2 years. They signed wide receiver AJ Green. So looking at adding to the cornerback to the wide receiver room. They signed safety Washington, safety Williams, safety Banjo. They add an older running back in Connors. We added Rico Dowdle, cornerback T. Hayes. They added Williams. They added Denard. They added Collins, a linebacker, and as far as they drafted Collins in the first round, they drafted Rondale Moore in the second round, so top 2 round pick to a wide receiver, just like us. They signed cornerback Darryl Worley, which Panther Darryl Worley, and they acquire Zach Ertz. So they get pass catchers, which is what we did. They get another running back, which is what we did, and they just focus on adding defensive players over and over and over again. Let's keep going. I picked for 2022 the change from the 2021 Vikings to us. So this is Kirk Cousins going into his 4th year with the team, but it's close enough, right? Because they had Justin Jefferson on that 2021 Vikings team. He was a rookie, just like Excel was a first-round rookie. I think they only were drafted less than 10 picks apart from each other as far as players. They had an older back in Dalvin Cook. When I say older, I mean like 25 and up. We have Chuba, 1,000-yard backs. So they didn't really have to add to that room. So the 2021 Vikings were, last 8 games, they were 4-4. We were 3-5. Pretty close. Their record was 8-9. Like I said, we were 3 plays away from being 8-9. So it's close. And here's what was their flaw. I'm not going to keep on going to the defensive players that got hurt, but they had injuries on defense. And this is how they attacked their offseason. They signed linebacker Hicks. They signed defensive tackle Phillips. They signed outside linebacker Smith. They signed cornerback Sullivan. They signed cornerback Hairston. They signed cornerback Smith. They signed cornerback Patrick Peterson. They signed defensive tackle Reed. They drafted Lewis, who's a safety. They drafted Booth, who's a cornerback. They drafted Evans, who's a cornerback. They drafted defensive lineman Tamawo. I can't remember. They signed defensive lineman Bullard, and they traded for T.J. Hawkinson. So they added to the pass catching room. They kept their 1,000-yard back. They completely focused on defense in the offseason. And they went from 8-9 to 13-4. It really ain't that different. It really isn't. These teams' problems are the same problems that we've had. We had no depth on defense. We had a quarterback into his 3rd or 4th year on as far as with the team. They all needed to add pass catching to the room. And they all ended the year either 3-5 or 4-4. On that sort of I guess for us it was momentum because we were playing well, especially on offense, and we knew it was just the defense letting us down. Same thing with a lot of these teams. Justin Jefferson was killing it at the end of the year with the Vikings. Hopkins was killing it at the end of the year with the Cardinals. So let's keep going because I just want to keep this flowing, I guess. So I'm going to compare the 2020, because I know we've already done the Browns, but it's the closest one I can think of for this example. So the 2022 Browns, they got Deshaun Watson. And Deshaun Watson in 2022 could only play for 6 games, and he went 3-3 down the stretch. And the Browns overall in 2022 went 4-4 down the stretch. They finished 7-10. We finished 5-12. And they had problems with their defense again in 2022. But their offense was kind of clicking. Even when Deshaun came back, he didn't look great, but he was 3-3. And they were doing enough because they ran the ball well. They had a great offensive line. And they had guys like Njoku. So with the Browns did their offseason in 2023, because they knew, just like we only had 10 games-ish of Bryce, 12 games of Bryce, they had six games of Watson. So in theory, they were looking to add around Watson, just like we're looking to add around Bryce. And we needed to fix the defense. So their plan, this is the Browns did. They signed Okoronkwo, defensive tackle Tomlinson, safety Thornhill, defensive tackle Hurst, defensive tackle Hill. They traded for Elijah Moore, so they're adding playmakers for Watson. They signed Graham, cornerback, Steele, defensive tackle. They draft a wide receiver in Tillman, just like we drafted a wide receiver in T-Mac. They draft defensive tackle Ika. They draft a cornerback in Mitchell. They draft a defensive end in McGuire. And they trade for Zadarius Smith, outside linebacker from Minnesota. So they focus heavily on the defense and pass catchers for Watson. And then Watson starts off the following year 5-1 with this new team. Even though he didn't play well, he had pass catchers and he had a new defense. And overall, that Cleveland team went from 7-10 to 11-6. I'm not like just trying to find like teams that like won the next year to like help my case. I'm telling you the closest team that was like ours last year. And it's kind of cool. It's kind of fascinating. And then to end it out, the 2023 Broncos was the most like our team. Last year, we had a new coach. That year, Sean Payton was a new coach. He's integrating his new system. He gets rid of a lot of players, and he's adding a lot of new players. So in 2023, his problem was quarterback, was a new installation of the scheme. The receivers didn't play well within his system, but overall, they just didn't have the players on defense that he wanted. And he needed a defense. So they ended their year 4-4 in 2023. We ended our year 3-3 in 2024. And they finished 8-9. We finished 5-12. But we could easily finish 8-9 with 3 plays away. So that the offseason for the Broncos was they signed safety Jones, defensive tackle Roach. They traded Jerry Jeudy away, just like we traded Mingo and Deontay Johnson away. They signed linebacker Barton. They signed defensive lineman Blackson. They signed cornerback Wallace. They traded for defensive end Franklin Mayer. They signed cornerback Newsome. They signed outside linebacker Ellis, linebacker Smith, and outside linebacker Tillman, while also drafting guys like Troy Franklin and Vele. So they added pass catchers, just like we did, and they focused on the defense and in the free agency, just like we did. And then they went 10-7 the following year. So they went from 8-9 to 10-7 in the playoffs. So with all these teams, they all made the playoffs, which is awesome. So let's go back and just conclude what I compared to all our team to all these teams. So the 49ers were 4-12. They went to 13-3 and made the playoffs. and went to the Super Bowl that year, I believe. The Browns in 2020 went from 6-10 to 11-5. The Cardinals went from 8-8 to 11-6. The Vikings went from 8-9 to 13-4. The Browns went from 7-10 to 11-6, and the Broncos went from 8-9 to 10-7. The teams that stayed bad were the ones that finished on a bad note, like as far as like they went 1-7 or they went, something along those lines. But the ones that had like a little bit of momentum to end the year, and a lot of the problems were because of injury, like these that I just told you, they ended up doing pretty well the following year. And if I say that this is, in my opinion, the closest that I could say for the Panthers, and we're looking at next year, just I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but I'm saying if we followed along this, I'm just going to do the average. And I'm going to cut to the results right now. So on average, the teams that were most like our team were a 7-10 team. And I think we can comfortably say that we could have easily been a 7-win team. A lot of stuff didn't go our way at the end of games, but we could have easily been a 7-10 team. And those 7-10 teams, on average, go to 12-5 the following year. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but I went through a lot of data, a lot of similar situations, a lot of similar quarterback problems as far as like second-year quarterback, third-year quarterback in the system, defensive injuries, pass catcher upgrades, new coaches, and on average, those teams were 7-10, and on average, they increased their win total from 7-10 to 12-5. So let's just say that we're 5-12. We just take 2 off of that 7-10 mark, and then we take 2 off the next year. The data says that a 5-12 team with a similar problems will go to 10-7. It's just a cool way to look at it. Like I think that a lot of us are just intuitively negative towards the Panthers because they've just been bad for so long and they always disappoint. And so we're afraid to make that bold claim of, I see 10 wins here. I see 11 wins here. Because historical data says it. Historical data tells you similar teams make that jump. But we don't think of it as like objectively. We think of it as like, I don't want to be the guy that says we're an 11-win team because then I'm gonna get made fun of when we're the worst team in the league again. I don't want to be that wrong. I'm afraid of being wrong. But if you say I'm just gonna stick to the numbers and I'm not gonna care about assumptions or like I'm not gonna let my emotions have a say into what's going to happen, and you just look at the math. The math says similar teams go from 7-10 to 12-5. And not only that, if you talk about mean, median, and mode, look at what is the biggest jump you could make and the smallest jump you could make. The biggest jump you can make would be what the 49ers did. They were 4-12, and they jumped to 13-3. The smallest jump was the Broncos. They were 8-9, and they jumped to 10-7. So we just go by that. Let's just say we just go by that. And then our realm of possibilities is just going to be nothing but an increase. So the Broncos made a 2-win jump. So they went from 8 to 10 wins. So we would go from 5 to 7. So our floor, just by this, is 7-10. And our ceiling, because the 49ers did a 9-win jump, would be 14-3. That's the range of possibilities based on the historical data that I found. Granted, it's not a huge sample size, but it's big enough to give you a little bit of security just to be willing to make a bold prediction about this team because the numbers back it up. That said, man, I think we're going to be really good. I think this team is going to be really good just because I also think that we're going to fill the cornerback and the safety need just because Dan basically said it. We created more cap room that's going to be made for something. Bold take for me is 12-5. But the data would suggest when you look at just 2 teams had 13 wins and the rest were 11, 11, 11, and 10. The safe bet is 11 and 6. And I feel like you can be pretty confident saying that. That said, things happen. I mean, guys can get hurt. But on average, because 10, 11, 11, 11, 13, 13, 11 is pretty much your median. It's going to be median in mode. So 11 and 6 is a pretty comfortable number to predict if you're optimistic and you're scared to make that prediction. I'm looking more at 12 and 5. I think this team's going to be really, really good. But I'm comfortable saying 11 and 6. All right. Well, appreciate y'all listening. Until next time. Peace.